If you two are getting divorced, this will be our home. Finally, you're out of the way.
Grace gleefully shouted this when she found out I was divorcing my husband. She thought she could take over our penthouse apartment. Seeing her so happy made me furious. We'll ask the outsider to leave. Everything's going our way, and we couldn't be happier. As Grace continued, her daughter Maria grinned. I had no choice but to leave the apartment, but what awaited them was beyond shocking. My name is Chloe. I'm 32 years old, working as a company employee, and I've been married for 2 years. My husband Kyle works at a big company and always seems busy.
You're so lucky to be married to Kyle, who works for such a big company. You should be grateful for the good life you're living because of him.
Every time I saw Grace, she would brag about her son, and I couldn't say anything back. Kyle started giving excuses about not contributing much to our household expenses. He said he needed money to study for qualifications required for his job. Since I work as well, I accepted his explanation. It wasn't a big deal that he reduced his contribution. The apartment we live in has always been mine, so there's no rent burden. The apartment was originally my father's, which I inherited after his death a year before I got married. The land on which the building stands was passed down from my father's parents. He used the proceeds from selling it to buy the penthouse. My mother still lives in another tower nearby. My mother was the sole heir, and we had to sell other properties to pay the hefty inheritance tax. Before my father passed, I had hoped to show him my wedding, but it was too late. When my husband and I moved into the apartment, Grace seemed to have misunderstood.
Living in a penthouse? Kyle really is amazing. I'd love to live here with you.
Grace believed Kyle had brought the apartment, and his sister Maria felt the same way.
The penthouse doesn't suit someone like you, Chloe. Why don't we live here instead?
I wanted to correct them, but Kyle jumped in.
If you can pay the mortgage, you can live here. But the payments are high. Only I can afford it.
His words left me unable to reveal the truth. He had been pretending to his family that he had bought the apartment. If I told them the truth, they wouldn't believe me. His mother was so proud of her son working for a big company that she would never believe Kyle hadn't bought the apartment himself.
Is it okay if we just pretend the apartment is under my name? As a man, I've got my pride. That's why I lied.
He looked apologetic, but I didn't say anything. After all, we didn't live with his family, so it wasn't really an issue, or so I thought. But then, Grace started visiting frequently. My father-in-law had passed away long ago. Grace lived with Maria and her husband. Their house was old, and Grace was unhappy with it.
I hate paying rent for that rundown place. Someday I want to live in a brand new penthouse.
Mom, you're always complaining. If you hate it so much, why don't you move here? Maria said it jokingly, but Grace seemed to take it seriously. I started to worry that she really wanted to move in with us. Even though she had previously told me, I won't live with you because I don't want any trouble with my daughter-in-law.
This apartment was bought for Chloe and me to live in, Mom. You said you didn't want to live with us, remember?
That's right, you did say that. Kyle pointed this out, and Grace seemed surprised. She had forgotten her own words. But as the eldest son, you should live at the family home. We'll take this apartment instead. I had always sensed that Maria wanted to live in the penthouse, and this confirmed it. Her husband Alex seemed too quiet to argue. I'd often seen him give in to Maria's demands. Kyle brags about working for a big company, so he should lend us some money. It's unfair that he gets to live here while we struggle.
You should pay for your own house. You and Alex both work, don't you?
Kyle snapped back at Maria, telling her to rely on her husband. Alex, however, always remained silent, even though he earned a good salary as a company employee. Maria, a housewife, seemed to spend a lot of money frivolously.
Maria is always out having fun, and I end up doing all the housework. Alex doesn't complain, so she gets more and more carefree.
Grace would complain about Maria when they visited, but the two of them still came over together. Despite her complaints, they seemed close, with Grace even doing housework in place of Maria. One day, Alex, who rarely spoke, mentioned something odd.
Kyle hasn't changed jobs, has he? I saw someone who looked just like him at a coffee shop the other day.
Alex has seen someone resembling Kyle at a coffee shop during the day. Even though Kyle hadn't told me he had changed jobs, I brushed it off at the time, thinking it must have been a mistake.
The company's cafeteria is enough. I don't need a packed lunch.
Kyle had refused homemade lunches after we married, but recently he started asking me to make them for him. I didn't think much of it until Alex's comment made me suspicious. When I casually asked Kyle if he was still eating at the cafeteria, he acted normal and said yes. I didn't think he was hiding anything.
The company's not doing well and my salary's been cut. Please don't tell my mom about this.
I remembered Alex's comment and began to suspect that Kyle might have secretly switched jobs. I knew the company Kyle worked for was actually doing great. It had been reported in the news. I began to wonder if Kyle had left his job without telling anyone. Things became even more suspicious when Kyle asked me to keep the salary cut a secret from his mother. Kyle's mother had been boasting to relatives and neighbors about his big company job. If he had really quit, his pride and fear of disappointing his mother would explain why he hadn't told anyone. One day I received a call from my mother saying she wasn't feeling well. My mom, who lived in the penthouse across from ours, had always been healthy, so I rushed over to check on her. She seemed weak and tired, so I called an ambulance. While waiting at the hospital, I tried calling Kyle, but he didn't answer. After my mom was admitted for treatment, Kyle finally called me back.
Don't call me at work, I'm busy.
I told him about my mom's condition, and suddenly I heard the sound of a TV in the background. I thought, why would there be a TV playing if he's at work? Then I heard a woman's voice saying something like, "Did your wife find out?" My heart dropped. I realized that Kyle wasn't at work at all. Instead, he was with another woman. I kept my voice calm as I told him I'd be staying at the hospital with my mom for the night. Kyle didn't seem to realize I had heard the TV or the woman's voice. I hung up the phone, now convinced that Kyle was not only hiding his job situation but also having an affair. The next day, while caring for my mom, I couldn't shake the thought that Kyle had been cheating on me. When I returned home that night, Kyle was still awake, looking irritated.
Why didn't you call me? I've been waiting up for you.
His sudden concern caught me off guard, given his previous disinterest. I wanted to confront him about not visiting my mom, but I bit my tongue. I calmly explained that I'd be staying at my mom's for a while to help her recover. Kyle, however, was more concerned about his own well-being.
What about me? Who's going to cook for me? And what about my lunches?
I wanted to scream, "Have your mistress cook for you," but I held back. I simply told him to handle his meals himself.
I've got it. I'll help Mom come over to help.
He was delighted at the idea of his mother taking care of him. Honestly, I was relieved not to have to deal with Kyle anymore, and having his mother there meant I could stay away longer.
Can you give me some money for groceries? I'm a bit short on cash.
His request shocked me. How could he be so broke? Was he spending everything on his affair? I reluctantly gave him the money, but I was furious. Leaving him behind, I moved in with my mom and began commuting from her place. Whenever I went back to the apartment to do laundry or clean up, I would check for signs of his affair. But it turned out there was no need. Don't worry, Chloe. I'm taking care of Kyle. You should just focus on your mom. In fact, why don't you stay there permanently? Grace had fully moved into the penthouse and was making herself comfortable. The view from the penthouse is amazing, and the house is so new, I don't think I'll ever go back to my old place. Despite living there, Grace did little more than cook. She even asked me to increase her grocery money. Kyle gave me some money for groceries, but it's not enough. Honestly, I should be paid for all the work I'm doing. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I angrily responded, I'm not a high-powered executive like Kyle. If you want more money, ask him for it. But Kyle says he's out of money because the mortgage payments have gone up. I was stunned. We didn't even have a mortgage on the apartment, so what was she talking about? Kyle had told her we had taken out a loan, but that was a complete lie. Chloe, you should help Kyle out financially. If you can't, then you're a useless wife. Her words made me furious, but I decided not to tell her the truth. If she only believed Kyle's lies, there was no point in explaining. I simply said, yes, I guess I'm a useless wife. Maybe you'll kick me out soon. Exactly. She looked triumphant while I was fed up with both her and Kyle. I started seriously considering divorce. As I continued to visit the apartment, I soon discovered that Maria had also moved in. I've decided to live here too. From now on, this is our family home. I had suspected she might try to move in, and my fears were confirmed. I had hoped her husband Alex would stop her, but apparently he couldn't. By the way, I divorced Alex. I'm planning to remarry soon, and my new husband and I will live here together. I was shocked to learn that Maria had already divorced Alex and had a new fiancé lined up. It explained why she had been spending so much time at the penthouse. Around this time, I ran into Alex, who filled me in on the details.
Yeah, Maria told me she's marrying some rich guy. She admitted she was cheating on me and asked for a divorce.
I was surprised to hear that Maria had borrowed money to pay Alex alimony. If her new fiancé was rich, why did she need to borrow money?
She said her new man is stingy despite being wealthy. I think there's something fishy about him.
Alex suspected that Maria's new fiancé wasn't as rich as she claimed.
Oh, by the way, Maria said they plan to live in the penthouse after they get married. That's not really possible, is it?
I told Alex the truth, that Maria had already moved in while I was staying with my mom. I also shared that I was planning to divorce Kyle, so it didn't matter to me anymore. Alex was surprised, but didn't seem shocked. He then told me something else that made my decision even clearer.
I kept seeing Kyle at that coffee shop, by the way. I didn't want to tell you because it felt awkward with my own divorce going on.
Alex has seen Kyle several times since our last conversation. This confirmed my suspicion that Kyle wasn't just lying about his job, he was also having an affair. With Alex's help, I finally resolved to hire a private investigator. I needed concrete proof of Kyle's infidelity before filing for divorce. Around that time, my mom's health improved, and the doctor said she could go home soon. With that weight lifted off my shoulders, I focused on the private investigator's report. When the investigation was complete, it revealed exactly what I had suspected. Kyle was having an affair. But there was even more shocking news. Not only had Kyle been cheating on me, but he had quit his job because of it. His affair with a colleague had been discovered at work, and rumors spread quickly. Unable to face the humiliation, Kyle resigned from the company on his own. The reason he hadn't been contributing to the household expenses was that he'd been living off his savings. I finally realized why Kyle had asked me to make him lunches. It wasn't about saving time, it was about saving money. His mistress had also quit her job and was now working part-time. I called Kyle and asked him to meet with me so we could discuss everything openly.
We don't need to involve anyone else. Just the two of us can talk about this.
No, your mother and Maria need to be part of this conversation. This involves them too. Kyle refused to accept this, but I reached out to his mother anyway.
Perfect. We needed to have a talk with you as well, Chloe. Let's all get together and sort this out.
I could already guess what Kyle's mother wanted to discuss, getting rid of me so she could take over the penthouse. The day of the meeting, I showed up with the investigator's report in hand, but Kyle was nowhere to be found.
Kyle was just here a moment ago, but now he's disappeared.
Don't worry about him. My new husband Henry is here, so we're good. Maria introduced her new fiancé, Henry, who looked nothing like a wealthy man. He had disheveled hair, a scruffy beard, and an anxious expression. He definitely didn't have the air of someone who came for money. But I wasn't concerned about Maria's new husband. I needed to deal with Kyle. I immediately called Kyle and asked him where he was. Today was supposed to be the day we talked everything through.
I'm not feeling well, so I went to see a doctor.
I was so angry, I couldn't help but shout into the phone. You're just using this as an excuse to run away to your mistress, aren't you? I know everything. I've had you investigated. Kyle went silent on the other end of the line.
So that's why Kyle hasn't been coming home much. He's been cheating this whole time.
I've suspected for a while. I could tell something was off. Maria seemed almost smug, probably because she had done the same thing to Alex. I told Kyle to come home immediately, but he hung up the phone instead. With Kyle refusing to show up, we started the meeting without him.
If you and Kyle are getting divorced, then this penthouse is going to be ours. Finally, we can get rid of you, Chloe.
Ray seemed elated at the thought of me leaving, and Maria was all smiles. Yes, we'll have to ask you to leave. Everything is going according to plan. Both Maria and her new husband were grinning, clearly enjoying the thought of taking over the penthouse. The atmosphere was making me feel sick, but then Kyle finally showed up.
I'm not planning to divorce you, Chloe. I can't afford to.
Kyle pulled me aside, trying to get me out of the house. It seemed he didn't want his mother or sister to overhear what he had to say. Once outside, Kyle looked desperate.
If you leave now, how am I supposed to live?
His pitiful expression annoyed me, so I replied bluntly. Why don't you find a new job? You can't keep lying to your mother and sister forever.
So you knew I had quit my job? I figured everything would come out when you said you hired a private investigator.
Kyle seemed utterly defeated as he admitted his lies. He explained that he had left the company because his affair had become public knowledge and he couldn't handle the shame. I handed him the divorce papers and demanded he sign them. I then mentioned that Alex had seen him at the coffee shop while he was supposed to be working. Kyle was shocked to learn that Alex had been aware of his behavior all along.
I did look for another job, but the only positions available were with small companies. If I take one of those jobs, my mom will be furious.
Kyle's pride and his mother's expectations had kept him from moving forward. He hadn't even told her he had quit because he couldn't bear the thought of her disappointment. I looked at him, realizing just how much his pride and lies had destroyed our marriage. I told him clearly, "I'm sorry you lost your job, but you still owe me alimony. You're the one who cheated, so you have to take responsibility." Kyle's face fell even further, realizing that there was no way out of this. I almost felt sorry for him, but I was too angry to show any compassion. As I turned to head back inside, Kyle stopped me.
Let me explain everything to my mom and Maria. Maybe Maria's new husband can buy the penthouse from us.
I doubted Maria's fiancé could afford the penthouse, but I agreed to let Kyle handle it. I didn't trust him or Henry, so I decided to put the penthouse on the market through a real estate agent. I wanted no part in their schemes. Even though it would have been satisfying to tell them the truth about the penthouse being in my name, I chose to stay quiet for now. I was curious to see if Maria's new husband would really try to buy it. I assumed that once they learned the truth, Kyle's family would turn on him for lying. Eventually, a month passed and Kyle's family still hadn't moved out of the penthouse. I assumed Kyle had finally told them the truth about the house and was preparing to leave. Then out of the blue, I got a call from Maria. "The real estate agent is saying we need to move out immediately. What's going on? Where's Kyle? Why isn't he answering your phone?" Maria was furious, clearly caught off guard by the eviction notice. "You can't just kick us out like this." Maria demanded answers, but I calmly reminded her. "Didn't you tell me to leave?" So I left. "But why do we have to leave? This is Kyle's place." "That's where you're wrong, Maria. The penthouse is in my name, not Kyle's." Maria went silent on the other end of the line, processing what I had just told her. "Wait, what? You mean this place isn't Kyle's?" "Exactly. I've already sold the penthouse, so you'll need to find somewhere else to live." "But we can't afford to live anywhere else. What are we supposed to do?" "That's not my problem, Maria. Kyle didn't tell you the truth, so I'm telling you now." Furious, Maria hung up on me. I knew I'd be hearing from Grace next, and sure enough, I did. "Chloe, you're lying about all this, aren't you? Kyle will never lie to me about the house," I told her firmly. "If you don't believe me, ask Kyle yourself. The house was always in my name, and now it's been sold. You all need to move out." Grace refused to believe it at first, but I could hear Maria explaining everything in the background. "This can't be happening. Kyle promised us this penthouse was ours. He lied to me." After I hung up, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I was finally free of Kyle's lies and his manipulative family. That evening, Kyle called me, furious.
"How could you tell them everything? They're furious with me now."
I calmly replied, "I gave you plenty of chances to tell them yourself, but you didn't. This is your mess, Kyle, not mine."
"How am I supposed to fix this? Maria's new husband isn't even a rich guy. He's just a fraud who ran off with her money."
I knew this already from Alex, but hearing it from Kyle made me realize how deep in trouble his family really was. I ended the conversation firmly. "That's not my problem anymore, Kyle. I'm done with all of you." I hung up the phone, feeling lighter than I had in years. After selling the penthouse, I moved in with my mom for a while to help her recover fully. A few weeks later, Maria and Grace finally moved out of the penthouse. They ended up renting a small apartment together because Maria had been swindled out of a large sum of money by her new husband. Kyle found a job at a small company and I started receiving the alimony he owed me. He would occasionally call, asking for reconciliation, but I always refused.
"Chloe, I've got a new job now. Can't we give it another shot?"
I shut him down every time. I wasn't going to be fooled again by his promises. He was only interested in the money from selling the penthouse anyway. Each time he called, he asked how much I had gotten from the sale. It was clear he was just after the money. I told him off one last time. "Stop calling me, Kyle. If you keep this up, I'll report you for harassment." After that, the calls stopped, and I felt a huge sense of closure. Meanwhile, Maria reached out to Alex, begging him to take her back. I ran into Alex one day and shared the news about my divorce.
"Yeah, I heard from Maria. She tried to get back with me, but there's no way that's happening. She left me for a con artist, and now she's paying the price for it."
Alex explained that he had moved on and even gotten remarried.
"I'm glad I didn't go back to her. When I told her I got remarried, she started spreading rumors that I was the one who cheated. It's wild. I had to change my phone number to get away from her."
I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Seeing Alex happy with his new life made me realize that I could move on too. After the divorce, I started seeing a colleague from work. He had always been supportive, especially when my mom was in the hospital. It wasn't until after my divorce that I realized how kind and caring he was. He's single and knows about my situation, so I'm thinking about giving it a chance. If things go well, I hope he'll be open to living with my mom. I know it's early to think about marriage, but it feels good to have something to look forward to. After everything I went through with Kyle and his family, I'm determined to find happiness this time.